Hey everyone, it's the host of All Across America, Marco Vig, jumping in for a few seconds before the show to thank y'all for listening, to let you know that I want to hear from you. Tell me what you like about the show, and send me your suggestions too. Follow us on Instagram at AllXAmerica, or visit the website, allacrossamerica.net, and you can use our contact page there. If you want to support us, we're on Patreon at patreon.com/allacrossamerica. Try to respond personally to everyone who reaches out, so say hello. All right, on with the show. Podcasting from Portland East to Portland West, from Big Pine Key to Pacific Beach, and from San Juan to Guam, this is All Across America. To start it off, I always like to we'll do a 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4 together. All right, that means we officially started. How's that sound?
Okay.
All right, so 1, 2.
1, 2.
1, 2, 3, 4.
3, 4.
All right, here we go. All right, so Mikey, I was telling my brother, he's asking about you, and he said, tell me about Mike McCafferty. And I said, you ever seen the Dos Equis commercial? The most interesting man in the world. Mike's like the Irish version of that. You're an early software pioneer. You're a Ferrari racer, biplane pilot, pool champion, expert marksman. You were in the Air National Guard, and I think you were the first person I ever met.
Guilty.
And I think you were the first person I ever met that had a glass front refrigerator. which
still do.
You still? I remember you had the juices on one side, you had the Guinness on the other side. I don't recommend it unless you live alone, and definitely not if you have kids. Can I have a snack, please? Snack.
That's a fact. Yeah.
Well, I wanted to start. I mean, we could go all the way back to Philly, and I'm sure we would. But you had mentioned just before we started about telemagic, and I wanted to hear about that because that's kind of the genesis of everything that we just ran through. So. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that and take it from there. What do you think?
Well, yeah, you want to start at telemagic. What that's such a big story. I could go on forever. It is. How much time do we have?
I mean, we got all the time in the world. I mean,
it's like a Joe Rogan, we can go 3 hours.
Yeah, we could go 4 hours. I mean, we could do multiple sessions,
Whoa.
But I mean, for folks that correct me if I'm wrong, this is one, if not one of the first, customer relationship management softwares ever.
The first.
Wow.
The first.
Wow.
Absolutely. There was no such thing as customer relationship management.
Right.
When I came out with this thing, it was really like an electronic Rolodex.
Okay.
Right? Rolodex with the old spinner with the names and addresses.
I got one.
Yeah.
I got one in my attic.
So it was automatic. It was a computerized version when PCs were just first available. This was 1985 when I started the software thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, PCs have been out just a couple of years. There was hardly any software for it. And most of it was spreadsheets, word processors, that kind of silly stuff, nothing that you could really use to make money.
Right.
And so that was my contribution to the whole thing. What can I tell you?
I mean, for folks that don't know what it is, Salesforce would be the modern equivalent, right? Would you say
exactly?
And
exactly.
To make it even more simple than Salesforce, let's say you're leasing another car at the same dealership, and you walk in, and the dealer says to you, "Hey, Bob, how you doing?" And he says, "How's your daughter doing? She's 12 years old, 3 months and 2 days now." And you say, "Whoa, how did you know that?" And that's the CRM. So, you could record all sorts of personal biographical information about customers. It'll tell you to follow up with them in 2 weeks, send a birthday card, Christmas card, New Year's greetings, all that good stuff. Right.
Right.
Well,
and
I mean,
it seemed so simple to me at the time.
Right.
It seemed so obvious.
Yeah.
But of course, I was a salesperson. I had a lot of
Right.
experience selling stuff.
Right.
And I was also a programmer, so I
Okay.
knew how to build products. And I was also an entrepreneur. I had
Right.
long experience starting businesses. So those three skill sets, talents, whatever, they came together in me so that I could build the product that I envisioned, that I really wanted to use myself, that I
Yeah.
never had in all those other startups that I was in.
Right.
But so here I am, and I just figured, well, I had a customer that I had
Okay.
sold him his first computer like 3 years before,
Right.
and and I stayed good friends with him, and kept doing more and more software for him, added computers, selling him stuff. I was an independent computer consultant. I was a hired gun.
Okay.
You just point me to whatever computer and I'll make it sing for you. That's your
Right.
problem. I'll make it sing.
Yeah.
And by this time, I had 20 years experience of doing that kind of stuff. So, I mean, there wasn't anything that scared me, right?
Yeah.
And so I sold this guy his computer and sold him more stuff after that, and a lot of software, and trained his people, et cetera, et cetera. And and I had a lot of other customers too that come at me from time to time. And it occurred to me over a couple of years of working with various customers that what these people really needed wasn't available, because they all had their spreadsheets and they had their word processors, but there wasn't
Right.
anything for business. They had accounting software, but there wasn't any way to make money, generate money. And I
Right.
had a background in telemarketing in a previous adventure, so I knew how to burn through a lot of phone numbers and make notes and call people and set up arrangements, and
Right.
just dial in for dollars.
Yeah.
And so this guy, I told him, I said, the kind of software that you really need doesn't really exist. Now, let me explain to you what it would do. All right. And I told him it'd be a database of all your customers and prospects and all that sort of stuff. And you would, the computer would dial the phone for you and get them on the phone, and, and you'd be able to take notes, and they wouldn't
Right.
even know what you're typing anymore because they're on the phone.
Yeah.
And then when you want to call them back, you could say, I want to call this guy back in 2 weeks. So you just make a note to call back, and the computer will automatically bring up this record in 2 weeks.
Yeah. Wow.
And he says, boy, that sounds great. And I said, not only that, but you need another thing. You need an interface to software with your accounting software. So when you're talking to somebody, you can enter the order right there, and it automatically goes into your accounts receivable system and your inventory, all the stuff. He says, wow, that sounds great. How much is that going to cost? I said, it's going to cost you $5,000. This is 1984. I said, it's going to cost you $5,000. He says, all right. I said, but the catch is that you're going to pay for it and you're going to be able to use this software forever, but I'm going to own it. And I'm going to continue to improve it because I'm going to be selling it to other people. They're going to need this feature, that feature, whatever stuff you haven't even thought of yet, or I haven't.
Right.
And I'm going to put that in the software, and you're going to get that free. And he says, wow, sounds good to me. Let's go. Boom. That was it.
Wow. And
So
you had
I built the software.
You'd learned a lesson. I was reading one of your earlier ventures where you only had a 20% stake in it, and was this something where you had learned and said, I'm going to own this whole thing outright? And
well, that's the way it turned out. I mean,
yeah.
for the 7 years that it took me to start with that software product and then sell the company 7 years later.
7 years. Wow.
I still owned 100% of it.
Wow.
Still owned 100%. Yeah.
How
I had no venture capital, no loans, no partners, nothing. I mean, I started it all with, basic pocket change, never borrowed any money.
Wow.
Never,
How
there's
did you do it?
one, worked my ass off, man, you know, worked my ass off. I didn't play a lot of Frisbee in those 7 years.
Yeah, I bet.
I'll
I
tell you
bet.
that.
I bet. Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you were writing about. I was reading your book, "Startups for Love and Money," which is one of your many titles, available on Amazon, of course. And you were talking about the pay. Tell me about the sale process there. I mean, I can only imagine how long that took, what that was like, the pressure, the stress of seeing this big payday, but knowing that it could evaporate in a moment. What was that like?
Well, I've been studying business ever since college and before. I mean, I had businesses in college. And so, I mean, I've always been a very entrepreneurial, start a business, get things going, make money, have fun, blah, blah, blah. And, but it was all pretty much low key until I got out of school and started working in my own business. Then it became serious. Okay. But with the Telemagic adventure, I put together all the things that I had learned from 2, 3, 4 business adventures prior to that and all the mistakes that I made. And I decided I was not going to make them again. And it worked out pretty darn good. So it was about, I guess, maybe 6 years in to the Telemagic adventure, I realized that this business is killing me. I got a pain in my gut, my left side, that I swore to God was a basketball. I must have had a basketball growing in there. All right. Wow. I figured it's got to be the biggest tumor ever, because I have nonstop pain, nonstop focus on it. And it's all stress. It's all stress. I know it was stress.
Yeah.
But I knew it was killing me.
Yeah.
And I decided, screw it. I'm just going to sell the business because it's killing me. And I'll find something better to do that's not going to kill me. All right. And I decided that I'm going to give it 1 year. I'm going to sell this business within 1 year. And that's it. So I put together a board of advisors, a couple of friends, and a couple of people that really knew what they're doing in this arena. And I said, okay, here's our challenge, is to sell this company within a year, 12 months from today. We're going to sell the company. And I gave them a piece of the action, small amount, $1,000 for a meeting. And it's like 0.25% of the business,
right? Yeah.
Just as a juicer, get the better price. And I had been going to this seminar probably for the 3 years prior to it, called Selling Up and Selling Out. It was a company that specialized in selling software companies.
Wow. Okay.
Who does that?
Yeah.
Who does that? I just called them up because I had been to the seminars. They were $95, and they told you all the horrible things that can happen when you try to sell your own company. These guys are brokers. So it's basically a 2-3 hour seminar on why you should use them. I called him up. Guy comes out. We talk and set a percentage. Everything's fine. We have our meetings leading right up to the sale. He finds a couple of buyers. I interview them. A couple fall out. One buyer's left. Guy makes an offer. He says, what do you want for your software company that you've beaten yourself into submission for the last 7 years? What's that worth to you? And I said, I just want what it's worth. You just pay me what it's worth, and we're good. I don't want to argue about price. I don't want to dick around, and I don't want a haircut 3 months before the deal closes. I don't want somebody coming back and saying, well, this or that or something, and we got to pay you $1 million less or $2 million, whatever. I said, no, right. I just want a straight deal. I want an honest deal. I want what it's worth. I don't want to I don't want to beat you into submission. I don't want to play competition. And just pay me what it's worth. And they come up with a number. I said, okay, that was it.
Wow.
Now, fast forward, well, it takes months to negotiate the deal and do due diligence on their part, to talk to my customers and talk to the people and look at the financial reports and all the stuff,
Yeah.
And we get to 2 weeks before we're supposed to sign the agreements. 2 weeks before we're supposed to sign. Now, I'm a student of business for a long time. I've been subscribing to Fortune magazine since it was published. I read this stuff like people read pornography or something. I just love it.
People read pornography.
If there's one, I don't know. Not nowadays they don't. But one thing I knew absolutely is that when you go to sell a business, there are so many kinks that happen at the last minute that most of the deals that are intended to happen fall apart at the last minute for one reason or another. All right. Yeah. So even though I had this agreement and everybody expected it to close, I knew that at any minute this thing could fall apart for a reason I have no idea. And here's the thing. All this year that I'm thinking about and working towards selling the business, I'm also got to run the business. So it's like you're riding two horses at the same time. You can't let anybody in your business know that you're going to sell them off like slaves.
Right.
That's not a good picture.
Yeah.
So you got to run the business like it's going to be yours for the rest of the time.
Right.
I can't complain about the gut problem. I just got to be building my business. And at the same time, I'm trying to sell the business in secret. All right. So I'm riding these two horses at the same time, and they're kind of going like this.
Right.
It's not the same deal, right? It's not the same job. And so that was a challenge. But 2 weeks before the contracts were signed, 2 weeks, I sold it to a foreign company, England, and they bought it. And so they were going to come over and meet with, we're going to sign the agreements together and blah, blah, blah. And and all the time I'm thinking, I know that at the last minute, this shit just falls apart. It always does. It always does. I should expect it. It was a week and a half, 2 weeks before the deal was supposed to go down. And the Wall Street Journal is delivered to my door. I pick up the Wall Street Journal first thing in the morning. I open it up, and there it is. There's the reason why this deal is going to fall flat. And I said, well, I knew it was going to happen. I was expecting it to happen. And here it is on the Wall Street Journal headline. It turns out that the day before is when George Soros broke the Bank of England, and they devalued the pound, all right, which meant that they were going to have to pay me more than they anticipated in U.S. dollars because the pound was devalued.
Right.
And I'm thinking, oh, well, there you go. That's going to blow this deal way out of the water. And I'm just sitting there with this gut problem, this basketball in my gut, and I'm thinking, I'm waiting for the phone to ring, and the phone's not ringing, and their top contact was in Dallas, Texas, so I'm thinking, well, I can't stand the suspense anymore. They're not calling me. I'm going to call Dallas.
Right.
So I called Dallas, and they said, so how's it going, Mike? I said, well, it's going okay, but did you read anything about the pound being devalued? And he says, yeah. I said, well, how's that affect our deal? He says, don't worry, Mike. We transferred the money last week.
Oh, wow.
They transferred the money before the pound devalued. So I got my full thing. But what I'm saying is, like it could have happened a day before.
Right.
It could have happened
Right.
2 days
And
before.
that would
It
have been
doesn't
it.
matter. So one of those things, you never know. It was, I was lucky.
Yeah.
Lucky. And I've
Any,
always kind of felt that I'm one of the luckier guys on the planet. And that was another example.
yeah, for real.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at, I guess the Salesforce Tower is the tallest building in San Francisco. Mark Benioff, I guess, the founder and CEO, is a multi-billionaire, I'm sure. Any regrets that you sold?
Well, here's the thing. I sold in 92.
Okay.
October 2nd, 92.
Mm-hmm.
The internet really didn't get going until,
4 years.
Mark didn't start his business until like 95, but that was a wish that he could deliver software over the internet. The bandwidth was so slow that he didn't really get going until later. But if I had stayed with it, there's no question I would have been an internet company. No question. Right?
Yeah. Right.
But that was another 3 years, and I had a gut problem right now. And the clincher to the story is that we signed all the deal. They come out, they sign the deal, and they say, we transferred the money to your bank. And I said, really? Do you mind if I call my bank? Just to be sure. Right. They didn't give me like a suitcase full of money. They just said, we deposit it. I said, well, I'm going to call my bank, I called the bank and I said, any interesting deposits lately? And they said, oh, yeah. I said, well, good. Tell me the amount. Boom, got the amount. Fine. So I slept pretty good that night, but we were out partying and drinking champagne and all that stuff, bottles of Dom Perignon. We were acting the part.
Right.
The next morning, I called the bank again, just to be sure. Still there. Everything's fine.
Wow.
From that moment forward, no more pain in my gut. It was gone. It was just gone.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Stress, man.
Yeah.
Stress is a killer.
I mean, could you have made it another 3 or 4 years?
That's why I haven't gone. No, I had made this decision. I was going to sell. I mean, and nobody knew anything about the internet in 92. That was all academic stuff for
ARPANET,
big institutions. Yeah, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Nobody really knew it was going to take off that way. So
what was it like the first?
What? Go ahead.
I was going to say, what was it like the first couple of months?
After the sale?
Yeah.
Well, after the sale? Yeah. Well, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. Because, I had some time to think about what I was going to do with the money.
Right.
But I kept telling myself, don't get too excited about what you're going to do with the money, because remember, 95% of these deals, they never happen. They never close. Yeah. So don't get all excited, because it's probably not going to happen. But I had my eye on a Ferrari that I had sold probably, 10 years before, that I had to sell because of a business reversal in another startup, right? And I always wanted to get that Ferrari back. It was a 1965 Ferrari 275 GTB. And in 1978, I paid $22,000 for it. Okay, which was a lot of money then, but it was a very beautiful car. And over the years, the price of that car had gone up to over $1 million. Wow. And then had come back down to a couple $100,000. And when I sold the company, I figured, well, it's only a couple $100,000. I am flush. I am the fat cat, man. I got money coming out of every orifice here. And way more than I'd ever had in my life. This was like, but another reason why I sold the company is because I didn't have any savings. I didn't own a home. I was living in a 500 square foot apartment. I had no assets whatsoever. Everything I had was right back into the company. I'd make a profit. It'd go back into hiring somebody or promotions or advertising or product development. I was addicted to building the company, And then when it finally happened, it was like, whoa, whoa, here we are. This is the new reality, right?
Yeah.
I bought the Ferrari, and I always wanted to fly the biplane.
Yeah.
Always wanted to fly the biplane. And because I'd be sitting there in the afternoon writing software in this oceanfront little 500 square foot apartment on the oceanfront in Del Mar. And every once in a while, out of the corner of my eye, I'd see this biplane come flying right near the beach, right where I was, come flying in and swoop down real low on the ocean and shoot back up again. I would just say, man,
freedom.
I do so much want to do that, want to do that. Because I had gotten my pilot's license when I was 22. And I always wanted to fly a biplane. I didn't want to fly anything else, just a biplane. All right. It had to be a biplane. But I couldn't get my license in a biplane. I got my license in this very small not a Piper, a Cessna 150.
Mm-hmm.
And I got 8 hours worth of time in it. The instructor said, pull over the side of the runway, take off, you're on your own, solo. And I said, well, you think I'm ready? He says, yeah. I said, what if I don't think I'm ready? He said, you're ready. Yeah, just go for it. Man, that's how people get killed,
Yeah, well.
And so I did it. And the only reason I did it was because I wanted to prove to myself that I wouldn't get airsick or scared or whatever.
Yeah.
I went up, I soloed. That was it. It's the last time I flew until 93. So it was 1965 to 1993. So 28 years or so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, so I've been building up this desire to fly forever. I mean, I was a little kid. I'd make model airplanes and, it was a grand adventure, and it put me in a position where I'd never been before of having more money than I could reasonably spend in a short period of time. And I figured, well, this is my new reality. And so I got the toys, I got the car, I got the airplane, and I moved into a big house, 8,000 square foot place, brand new, never been lived in.
Wow.
Because I wanted room for a pool table. And I needed a place for a garage. I needed a place for a garage for the Ferrari,
Right.
So I needed a pad,
Yeah.
And so I lived there for a couple of years. That was fun. But then I moved out to a place in the desert. I don't know if were you ever out in the desert?
No. Only been in the fun house in Del Mar.
Yeah. Well, I had this place out in a ranch that was big place, brand new, all white carpeting. And the first thing I did was I put a ping pong table on that white carpeting in the family room, big family room. I said, man, I'm going to play ping pong until I fall over. And when I fall over, it's going to be on this real thick white carpet. It's like, it's like you'd want to do diving catches, you want to do the thing. And I had a pub built into it. A friend of mine was a pub owner, and we had Guinness on tap.
Very nice.
Right? Guinness on tap. Oh, what kind of fantasy is that, right?
Yeah.
So it was nonstop party for 2 years until I moved out to the desert. Because I'd have a party every once in a while at this place in the ranch. And, the Ferrari was in the garage. The pool table was in another room. The pool was outside. And the airplane was up at the airport. So my favorite toy no, people knew about it, but they couldn't see it. They couldn't
Right.
sit
Couldn't
in
show
it.
it
And I
off.
said, you know what I need? You know what I need?
Yeah.
I need, I need to put my biplane in my bedroom. Whoa, whoa, a biplane in your bedroom? That's insane. Who does that? I said, I want all my toys in one room. And the only place you could do that, obviously, is at an airport. So I had to find an airport where I could build out a hangar into the most fantastic hangar home ever built,
Nice.
and that was it. So I had a pool installed, and I had all the thing carpeted, and I had just the tail of the biplane was like 10 feet from my toes when I was in bed. So I'd wake up in the morning and I'd hit this button, and this 50-foot wide door would open up like this. And I'm looking at the mountains, not another human being around.
Wow.
There's my biplane just ready to go.
Wow.
Yeah. Problem was a beautiful place. I worked on it for 4 years.
Wow.
Getting the thing right.
Yeah.
And when I finally had it right, it was 1997. That's the year I flew the thing over to. I didn't fly it there. I flew around Europe in 97.
Yeah.
So as soon as I moved in, I had this big party with 350 of my closest friends.
Wow.
And live bands and all the rest of that stuff, a whole weekend long party. And after the party, I jump in a biplane and I fly it to Lansing, Michigan, where they take it apart, stick it on a barge, send it out to St. Lawrence Seaway, over to France. Takes a while.
Yeah.
I'm living at the fun house, and everything's cool. And then I get a phone call that, okay, the airplane's here. So I jump on a commercial flight. We go over and we put the thing back together. And that's when I flew Europe for 3 months, 94 days of just flying around Europe, doing whatever the hell, True fantasy, absolute fantasy.
Yeah.
And so that was my life for, after the sale. It was just off the hook, outrageous insanity, And then I said, after the 94 days in Europe of flying wherever, I come back home and I'm waiting for my biplane to come back to me. They were going to go ship it, put it back together, stick it back in a box, float it back, fly it out.
Months.
So I'm living there. Yeah. And the thought hits me, this is really nice, but I don't like living in the desert.
Yeah.
Especially
not without a plane. Yeah.
So all this stuff was like, it was a great fantasy, but that was it. It was over. And I don't know. Did you read the book? The
Spirit of Adventure? Got it right here in front of me.
There you go. And did you read the last chapter?
It's been a while, but yes, I read the whole thing.
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
Well, the last chapter is really like, the whole book is about flying, and the last chapter was about not flying.
Yeah.
And I'm living back in Del Mar. I was ready to move back to Del Mar and put the biplane back up at Palomar, a different airport, because I just didn't like living in the desert anymore. But I was still going to keep the biplane. And so I'm standing on the balcony overlooking the Pacific Ocean in this condo that I'm just renting because I haven't found a place yet. And a duck comes flying along, perpendicular to my, to my vision, but along this path, right along the bluff, the ocean. And I think, just a duck, flying along. I see lots of flying stuff. And all of a sudden, but I'm in a very philosophical mood. I'm thinking about flying. I'm thinking about not flying. I'm thinking to myself, if you're thinking about not flying, like how long does a guy go flying? I've been flying now 7 years,
Long time.
and like 2000. I'm thinking to myself, I never wanted to be like a really old guy flying because you can get in trouble if your reflexes aren't right.
Right.
And I never thought I'd be flying forever. This is just a big itch that I had.
Yeah.
When do you stop flying? I mean, when do people stop flying? Probably because they had a heart attack or a physical problem or whatever.
Yeah.
Or they couldn't afford it anymore, or whatever. And I thought, And the thought occurred to me, if you're thinking about not flying, maybe you shouldn't be flying. And that's exactly when the duck was going like this. All of a sudden, the duck, he does a complete 90-degree in the air and starts flying directly at my face.
Whoa.
Now, I swear to God, this is real stuff. Now, he's still like 40 yards away, but he starts flying directly at me. And I'm in a condo building, 3 stories, 5 or 6 apartment wide.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, why is he flying this way? There's nothing here.
Right.
There's nothing. It stunned me. I'd never saw a duck change, any bird change direction like that. And I'm thinking to myself, did I scare this duck when I was flying sometime? Does he recognize me? No, he couldn't possibly recognize me because I had a helmet on.
Right.
Not. What the hell's with this duck? And these thoughts are going through my mind like a million miles an hour. And the duck is flying straight at me, man. And he gets within 2 feet of my face, throws out the wings, the air brakes, does a wing over, and lands 2 stories below me on the grass and looks up at me, never bats an eye, just looking at me like I'm thinking, what the hell? What is this about? And I'm trying to put it together, and I'm thinking to myself, what the hell? The duck is not taking his eyes off of me. He's not looking around for food or anything like a typical duck would. I'm thinking, what was going on when he changed directions? And it occurred to me, I was thinking, if you're thinking about not flying, you shouldn't be flying. And I look at the duck and I say to him, is that what you're here to tell me? And with that, the duck lifts up, goes back to the path, and resumes his trajectory. I never flew after that day.
Wow.
I called the factory. I said, I want to sell the biplane. That was it. I knew it was going to happen sooner or later. Yeah. All right, that I was going to quit flying. Yeah. I just didn't know when.
Right.
The duck showed up to tell me it was then.
And you kept the.
I never argued with it.
Yeah, well, you kept the propeller. Is that?
I kept what?
You kept the propeller, did you not?
No, that was the propeller that I have on my wall. Is the propeller that I had on the biplane when I was flying around Europe.
Right. Yeah.
And when I was done flying around Europe, I landed in County Donegal, Ireland.
Okay. Yeah.
Which was the birthplace of my ancestors.
Wow.
And when I left the biplane in Ireland. Okay, it was very wet, very cold. And that's why I stopped flying, because it was just freaking cold. Middle of December. Oh my God, it was horrible. Yeah. Rain, nonstop rain. So I said, screw it. Left the biplane there. I called the factory. I said, come and get it. Bring it back to me. Which is something you can do. And that was it. So how did we get on that?
Oh, propeller.
Oh, the propeller. They came and got the biplane. They flew it back to London, or back to Paris, put it back together, put it on a barge, sent it back to the factory. And at the factory, they put it back together again. And when they went to test the balance on the prop, they found out that it was all out of balance. It's a wooden propeller, and it had absorbed a lot of moisture, and there's no way you can get it back. So they called me up and they said, hey,
Right.
got bad news. You need a new prop. And I said, oh, wonderful news. Send me the old one. I want
awesome.
the old prop, man. Yeah. So that was it.
There it is, caked in Irish mist.
And I also kept the pilot seat. Kept the pilot seat.
Okay.
Because I had 1,000 hours of terror and joy in that seat, and I just wanted that seat. If I can't have the whole plane, I want the seat. And they said, you can't sell a biplane without the seat. I said, well, I guess you can't buy one then. I said, okay, we'll bring a seat out. We'll bring a seat with us when we come to fly it home. Of course.
Wow.
So, I loved those years of flying the biplane. That was just a wonderful, wonderful adventure of a lifetime, man. A dream of a lifetime. Yeah. And then actually it came true better than I ever could have imagined. Yeah.
Good How times. Far can you fly in a biplane in a year, or I should say in a day, in terms of mileage, hours?
Well, it'll fly maybe 110, 120 miles an hour. Max.
Okay. Yeah.
You get 15 gallons of fuel per hour is burned. Okay. And it can hold about 70 some gallons. So you could fly it for 5 hours, but you don't want to.
Okay.
It's open cockpit. It's like driving a convertible at 120 miles an hour with the top down.
Right.
Nobody wants to do that.
Right.
Nobody.
Yeah.
The temperature just sucks all the juices out of your body. It drives you out. You're dead.
Right.
I fly.
What's the altitude?
3 hours. That's the best. What altitude?
What is the what altitude you generally fly in a biplane? Yeah.
You fly as low as humanly possible.
Really?
It's not how high you fly, it's how low you fly.
Wow.
We'd be flying across the Midwestern United States, all farms, right?
Yeah.
We'd be flying across at crop height.
Wow.
That low.
Wow.
Where the vegetation gets in your wheels. And then we'd pop up for the fences.
Right.
Those. You know how they irrigate with these long devices with wheels on either end, and it's all and they spray all this stuff.
Right.
Well, some of them are circle, some are just straight, but whatever. That's how they do it.
Yeah.
All right. We would fly the biplane into the spray.
Oh my God.
See, that low. It's just because you get the sense of speed.
Right.
And you look so good doing it. Because there's people out there and they're looking at the most beautiful biplane ever built. There's no question about it. It's just outrageously beautiful aircraft.
Yeah.
It's poetry. It's true poetry. And you're putting on a show for these people. So that's half the fun, right? And the other half is if you can fly with somebody that has a plane just like yours, you can actually see how beautiful you look.
Right.
Yeah. We used to have a lot of fun, man. We used to go flying all over Western United States, everywhere. Just great. Many trips to the East Coast and back. Yeah, it's great.
Let me ask you this, a question for all pilots. Did you ever see a UFO?
I can't remember ever seeing a UFO. That doesn't mean they weren't there. I like to think that they might have been there and thought, What a beautiful, beautiful biplane that is. Oh, why don't we have something like that? We just got a saucer thing. That's bullshit. We want one of those. You know, it really was a gorgeous airplane.
Oh man.
There would be time. I wake up in the morning. I go down to look at my biplane, have breakfast. You know, there's my biplane. There's my bed. There's everything, all in one room. And some days I couldn't decide whether I wanted to go fly it or I just wanted to sit there and look at it. It's that poetically beautiful to me. You know, just gorgeous.
What was it made out of?
Yeah. Wood and fabric, you know, wood wings, fabric, just like it was in 1935. It was a 1935 aircraft built to 1935 specifications, but it was brand new. Every part of it was brand new. Wow. I was the first guy to buy it.
Wow.
And this company in Michigan, they make 7 of them a year.
Wow.
7. That's it. That's their whole thing.
That's all they do.
7 crazy people show up. Yeah. All they do. You know, like 7 people find their way and say, oh, I gotta have that. You know? Yeah.
So do you know where it is today?
Yeah. I know where both of them are.
Wow.
One's in Florida, owned by a guy who's an American Airlines pilot. Mm-hmm. And another one's in France, owned by an Air France pilot.
Wow.
Okay. So, yeah. And by the way, they both say, anytime you want to come out, you can fly this biplane as much as you want, you know?
Wow.
And I said, nah, I learned my lesson from the duck, you know?
Yes.
I'd love to do it, but I'm half afraid to fly it again because if I did, I'd probably just want to write another check. I want this airplane.
It'd be another one of the 7 crazies
already
again.
Yeah.
I mean, that says a lot that 2 commercial airline pilots flying jets at 30,000+ feet fly a biplane recreationally. I mean, that says it all right there to me.
Yeah. Because you're out in the open. Yeah. In a jet, you're air conditioned. You don't smell anything. When you're flying that biplane around, you smell backyard barbecues, what's for dinner, you know, you smell the flowers. You fly in the clouds, you feel the wet of the clouds on your face, you know. I mean, you feel so much more. Everything is right there for you, you know. You fly through clouds, you fly upside down, you do all the tricks and everything. You don't do any tricks in an airliner. No way, you know. Yeah. I had a good old days.
So Ferraris, you know, you driving a Ferrari, a plane. I mean, how is it similar? How is it different? Can they even compare?
Well, you know, Ferrari was really just an outgrowth of my childhood.
Yeah.
You know, I grew up pretty much on a used car lot. My father was a Ford dealer.
Right.
Big Ford dealer outside of Philadelphia, Langhorne, McCafferty Ford. And you know, I was just a car guy. You know, I grew up when, you know the story of Ford and Ferrari having the big competition back in the 60s. No? Okay.
Tell me
Le Mans. Well, Ferrari used to win all the races. 1964 Ferrari was unbeatable. And the models before it were just unbeatable. They just won everything. So they had a very great reputation. And they had beautiful, beautiful cars. But I was a kid, you know, my teens. And best thing I could afford was a $100 beater, you know. And that was after my father gave me a discount. You know, I could afford a $100 car. Right? And hey, it's just a car guy, but I was always reading stuff about cars. And you read the hot rod magazines, you see the West Coast hot rods, you read other magazines about racing and Indianapolis and the foreign races over in Europe and all that stuff, and the U.S. Grand Prix. And my father would take me to some of these races like Indianapolis 500, and he took me up to Watkins Glen. up around your neck of the woods, right? Well,
Yeah.
you're in
Yep.
Jersey, right? Yeah.
Connecticut.
Okay. New York, huh?
Mile from the border. Mile from the Connecticut border. I'm a mile from the New York border. So Watkins Glen is
There you go. There you go.
3 hours.
Watkins Glen. Yeah, that's where I used to have the U.S. Grand Prix.
Right.
And I would go there and watch these cars and the drivers. And my father's dealership was right next to Langhorne Speedway, which was like a really very famous old line speedway that all the stock car drivers would come to. And Ford Motor Company had a racing team. And they would come
Right.
and they would do all the prep before the races at my father's dealership. They'd take over the service bays, right, and the lifts and everything. And I'm a kid, and I'm walking around. I'm looking at all these race cars and everything, and I'm looking at all these famous drivers that were walking around working on their cars, and I'm thinking, oh my God, this is like the best thing ever. You know, I always wanted to be a race car driver, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, just a little kid wants to be a race car driver, but I also wanted to be a fighter pilot. Okay, so they finally came together. But Ferrari was just so famous.
Yeah.
And what happened was that Ford wanted to buy Ferrari, and they made a deal, and Ferrari agreed, and Mr. Ford goes over to sign the deal, and Ferrari backs out.
One of those last minute back out deals, right?
Yeah. So Mr. Ford said, all right, you son of a bitch. And that's what this movie is all about, Ford versus Ferrari. You got to see it.
Oh, okay. That came out in the last year, right?
Yeah. It's a great movie. You really love it. All right.
Check it out.
Yeah, you got to see it. A lot of action. And told the story. So Mr. Ford said, all right, you son of a bitch. Yeah, I'll see you on a track. So I spent a couple of years building the GT40. All right. And they kicked Ferrari's ass. 1, 2, 3, you know.
Wow.
And a staged finish, you know, for that photo op with Ford, and then Ferrari back in the distance. Right? So it's truly one of those magical moments,
right,
in business and in movies and, you know, and in life, where somebody says, all right, you son of a bitch, we'll do this. You're on.
What did your dad think when you got a Ferrari instead of the Ford GT?
Oh, well, you couldn't afford a Ford GT. Well, see, before I got the Ferrari, I had already gotten a Pantera and Jag XKE and Mustang High Performance. You know, I mean, I've been going through hot cars for a while, right? So just getting an old beat up Ferrari, which really wasn't beat up, it was in really wonderful museum condition, and you know, it's just gorgeous. 12-cylinder, just beautiful.
Wow, 12-cylinder.
Anyway, so I got the car, and as they're pulling it off the showroom floor, it's a used car dealer, high-end exotic cars, and this one was behind those movie ropes, you know, all roped off, where nobody could get near it, nobody could touch it. All right, and I go in the first day, and I said, "Oh, look at that car!" You know, oh, I used to have one of those back in Chicago. I was just fresh in San Diego. I said, "Oh, look at that car! I used to have one of those in Chicago, and I sold it before I came out here. But this one's in really fine shape. I mean, I'd like to drive that." And they said, "Oh, no, you can't drive that." And I said, "Well, how do you expect me to buy it if I can't drive it?" And they said, "Well, you know, if you want it, you'll buy it, and if you don't, you won't." I said, "Well, yeah, I want it." So I came back the next day with my 22 grand, and they said, "All right." They start moving cars around, moving the movie ropes, and taking it outside, and I'm getting in it for the first time. I put my ass in the seat, and the guy looks at me. He says, "So, what are you going to do with this car?" I said, "Fuck, I want to drive it." He says, "No!" You know, it was like that kind of car. You know.
Wow.
I said, "Oh, I'm going to drive this car." I drove that car for 2 years. I put 20,000 miles on it in 2 years.
Wow, which is a lot.
And the business that I loved that car. I loved that. It was the only car I had. I just drove the
Wow.
seeds off of that car for 2 years. And at the end of 2 years, it needed everything. It needed everything. At the same time, this other business was going weird, and I needed to sell the car anyway.
Yeah.
So I sold the car. The guy I sold it to was the guy who did all the tune-ups on it, kept it in shape. And he painted it yellow and fixed it up a little bit and sold it to a guy in Texas. And I lost track of the car for the next 20 years.
Wow.
Until just maybe 2 years ago. A friend of mine calls me up and he says, hey, McCafferty, 8603. I said, I don't know, what's 8603? He says, that's the serial number of that Ferrari you had. I said, no way. He says, yeah. I said, how do you know this? I read that the car is for sale and your name is listed as one of the owners of the car.
Wow.
Because, it's kind of like a painting. It's all provenance.
Right.
Provenance.
Wow.
Who owned it before
Yes.
and where was it and how long was it there? And
wow. Right.
was it on a south-facing wall where it didn't get sun and all this stuff, right?
Right.
This car was for sale by Sotheby's. Sotheby's auction, was being auctioned off. And in the description of the car, it had the mileage. It had the exact same mileage that I had when I sold it.
Really?
Nobody drove that car. It was just a garage queen for 20 some years.
20 years. Wow.
I'm the guy that really loved that car, man.
Well, then you deserve to be on the Providence list. I mean, wow.
Yeah. So that car, by the way, I paid $22 for it.
Yeah.
The car sold by Sotheby's to a guy in France for a little over $2 million.
Wow.
100 times what I paid for.
Wow.
It. Yeah.
20 years.
But that was, that's what Ferraris do. They just, especially that car.
Wow.
Steve McQueen owned one.
Right.
Steve McQueen, the king of cool, right?
Right.
He owned the car. It was like Roger Vadim, the French filmmaker. He owned the car. All this stuff, right? So it was a very special car. Very special.
So your biplane, your old biplane.
I just got cars. I got cars in my blood. I'm addicted to cars. Yeah.
I mean, Mikey, your old biplane and your old Ferrari are now in France. You ever thought of taking a trip and seeing both?
Yeah. I should go to France.
Yeah. Maybe they'd let you drive it.
Ride my old car
for $2 million.
Maybe. Why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they? I'm the guy that loved the car.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like if I went to meet my old girlfriend in France, who's now living with some guy. Don't you think he'd say, "Hey, take her out, have fun"? Yeah, sure. Maybe not.
Maybe not.
It might not be exactly the same. Yeah.
So what after you sold the biplane, I mean, how did you keep yourself busy? I mean, you've always been going, and you had a company and then a plane. Where did you find yourself? What did you do?
Well, I wanted to be back by the ocean, so I spent a little while finding a place back on the ocean where I could, live my life on the ocean. And it wasn't with a biplane anymore. It wasn't with a Ferrari. But I think I still had a Ferrari at that time. I did have the Ferrari because that's the one I raced up Torrey Pines Hill. I was still into cars. I had a Dodge Viper.
Oh, wow.
At that time with the Ferrari. Yeah, but it was a change of life. Instead of a life of conspicuous consumption, I mean, seriously conspicuous consumption, and realizing that this is not, it's not only not sustainable, it's not even desirable. I got rich. I spent a lot of money on toys and homes and travel and parties and girls, you know. But after a while, it's like, well, there's got to be more to life than that.
Yeah.
And right around that time, I started getting phone calls from people I knew that had referred their friends to me who were in business. These friends were in business and they were having a little bit of trouble. And they figured, hey, talk to McCafferty. Maybe he can, help you out.
Yeah.
So I kind of fell into being a mentor, an advisor.
Yeah.
I never advertised. I never decided that I wanted to be one. I just kind of became one, like Topsy. It just grew.
Yeah.
And one guy referred me to another guy and that and blah, blah, blah. And I never wanted to be busy. And, I'm retired. I didn't want to be busy.
Yeah.
And, but it was just enough to help other people. I never charged money. I never asked for any money, anything like that at all for the first, I don't know, maybe 10 years. But after a while, I realized that some of these people that I'm helping, they need more help than they're asking for, but I don't want to intrude on their life. And maybe why they're not asking me for more help is because they're not paying anything for it and they don't want to be, wearing out their welcome or whatever. So I said, well, maybe if I charge just a little bit of money, it would change the dynamic. And I did. I started charging $95 an hour.
Yeah.
Which is, token. And that worked good because then people, what is it? The advice is worth what you're paying for it. And if it's free advice, it's not worth anything.
Right.
So I charge a little bit, and then all of a sudden people say, they respect your advice.
Right.
Okay. So that's what I've been doing the last 20 years.
Wow.
Just helping out other entrepreneurs, And
Yeah.
they come to my house, we sit down, we talk, I tell them what I think, and they go away and then they come back again. And, sometimes we get in a schedule and that sort of thing. I got a client.
Let me ask you this.
Been with me now.
Go ahead.
No, he's been with me 7 years. So, some stick around a long time. Others. Now, this is just startups. I don't really want to deal with people that have like a restaurant or a whatever. I want to start up technology, preferably software, things I know about. And
right. Sure.
Yeah. So, low key, no advertising. Just,
you talk a lot about in your website and your writing about, I guess, the process and pitfalls. Can you talk a little bit about the personality types that you've seen be successful in an entrepreneur as opposed to those that are not? I look at Richard Branson, who, reading his biography, he'd said that his one of his high school teachers said he'd either end up in jail or become a millionaire. You ever felt like that rung true for you and is rung true for some of the folks that you've worked with and other folks that you've met? You've said this isn't the right path for them.
I have been so tempted to say that to some of them, but it's like the worst thing you can do is crush somebody's dream. You never know when they're going to catch fire. You never know when they're going to click in their head. All right. And you're there to help them, not to discourage them. So I never, ever discouraged anybody and say, you're never going to make it. All right.
Yes.
I try to give them the way to make it. But at the same time, the thoughts are in there, like,
Right.
ooh, this is a tough case. Or
Yeah.
maybe the guy is good, but the idea is awful,
Right.
you know? Like, why would you intentionally spend the next 10 years of your life doing such a stupid thing? I
Right.
don't want to say that, but we try to find a way to pivot out of the idea that's not going to work into some other idea that could work,
Might work. Yeah.
would work.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So, I mean, not to name names, but to maybe a composite of, the personality type that you said, this isn't the right folks, right person for, it's just not the right fit, or the composite sort of idea that just doesn't seem, you think is not going to fly.
Well, there's basically two different kinds of businesses in startup land. All right. And one is they call a lifestyle business, which could easily
Okay.
support somebody and his family and make them relatively well off. But they're
Yeah.
never going to go billionaire status because the idea just can't handle it. All right.
Scale. Yeah.
So, and there's others with like a great idea that could really go gangbusters, which is really what you want to work with. But at the same time,
Right.
I don't turn anybody down.
So
You
is there, I'm thinking of, I don't know, a classic example would be Steve Jobs versus Tim Cook. And, you look at Steve Jobs, who's kind of this volatile visionary, and Tim Cook is kind of this, even keeled executive. Is that kind of the archetype that you've seen in entrepreneurs?
Yeah, there's two different kinds of guys typically. There's the technical guy, and then there's the artist, the dreamer,
Right.
the marketing guy, the sales guy. All right.
Right.
Now, I like to deal with the latter, the business guy, the sales guy. All right, because he realizes
Okay.
that he can get anything built. The technician that comes to me with a business idea, he has no experience at all in business, and typically,
Right.
most people doing startups today, they don't have an experience at anything. I mean, they've never even
Yeah.
worked at McDonald's, right? They've got no experience whatsoever, just out of college, or they haven't even gone to college, and they have an idea and they want to
Yeah.
do it because
Right.
everybody by now knows Zuckerberg made $1 billion, $100 billion, all right,
Yeah.
with no experience whatsoever.
Yeah.
He dropped
Right. He
out,
was at Harvard.
no
Yeah.
experience, right? Right. And look at Jobs and look at, all these stories of people that have made it big, but without any real experience. But there's a real big difference between the people that have made it and the 99.9% that want to be that way and that they're just never going to be that way.
Yeah.
Not, well, they might evolve to that, but when they come to me, it's raw meat, raw
Yeah.
meat. And what you try to do is you just teach them principles.
Right.
Try to tell them what the principles are. All right.
Right.
You don't solve their immediate problem. You educate them on the principles of how to not have that problem ever again. Not solve this problem, but solve a whole class of problems like it to become a businessman as opposed to a gunfighter,
Right.
So,
And so, I was looking at one of your principles, and I think it was, it really spoke to me. And, I think, I hiked the entire Appalachian Trail. It took me 25 years to do it. And I started out with a backpack that weighed, I don't know, close to 60 pounds. And I finished up in Maine a couple of years ago with a backpack full of water and food that weighed 21 pounds exactly. And I had everything dialed in to, you started off, I don't know, sawing the handle off a toothbrush and, cutting the margins off of a map. And it
Yeah.
was just an ounce here, an ounce here, but where you really make up the weight is the pounds and losing things that you don't need. And, you really talk
Right.
about minimalism and, the over
Yeah.
engineering of things. And, something is not done until
That's it.
you can't remove anything. Can you talk more about that?
It's one of my favorite quotes by one of my favorite pilots, a guy by the name of Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, French guy, who wrote The Little Prince. He wrote the book, The Little Prince. And you've probably read that to your boys or will. And it's just a wonderful little book. But he wrote this wonderful quotation that perfection is achieved not when there's nothing more to add, but when there's nothing more to take away. And this applies so much in startup land because almost everything that's built by engineers is over-engineered. The first version is almost always horribly over-engineered. Yeah. And when I was building my software, I knew this going in, so I could be very minimalistic with it. But even then, I still fell prey to the concept of more is better. If I build this feature, which I just thought about this great feature. Oh my God, this is going to rule the world. And I programmed the thing for like 2 weeks and I put it into software and then I go off onto some other adventure. But I learned 6 months later, no one has ever used that feature.
Right.
How can that be?
Yeah.
And I knew that nobody had ever used that feature because it was a horrible bug in it and nobody ever reported the bug. So here I am thinking that this feature is going to rule the world and everybody, they snoozed. It was like a big zero.
Yeah.
You cannot believe your own PR.
Yeah.
So
there's
go
ahead.
People over-engineer the stuff.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It reminds me of a quote that was attributed to Stephen King and in his book On Writing, and it's kill your darlings. And you might have some great concepts, some great well-written paragraph, and it just may not make sense for the story. And I think that's a similar concept.
The best writing is editing.
Yeah,
it's all in editing.
Yeah,
yeah. So you got to kill off a lot of your favorite pros, man.
That's what it's about.
It's like this podcast. You'll kill off maybe 99% of it and say, he said something that was good.
Well, I mean, and I think this is, a great conversation to have early on because you work with so many entrepreneurs. And, while I don't consider myself an entrepreneur, it's a beginning. And
we are now.
It may just be an outlet. It may get to become something bigger, but we'll see. But I wanted, if we could, to turn to, how we met. And if you don't mind, talking about your son, Michael, who you've called your hero.
Anytime. My favorite subject.
Really? Well, that's good to hear.
How we met.
Yeah, I was.
No, my son, of course. My son. Yeah. I mean, you're a nice guy, but my son, now we're talking.
That's right.
Yeah. I had just ordered my biplane. I had flown out with a friend in his biplane to Casa Grande, Arizona, where they had a fly-in. There was all kinds of planes going to be there. And I was thinking I wanted to buy a Stearman, which is a biplane. And it's what World War II fighter pilots learned in. That was their first introduction to flying. and it was the plane that I intended to buy when I was 22 years old. When I took lessons to learn how to fly, I was going to buy a Stearman at that time because I saw an ad in a flying magazine that said Stearman's, rebuilt Stearman's, $7,500. This is in 1965. And I said, $7,500. Ooh, that's a lot of money. My annual salary in 64 was $6,500 working for IBM. That was the best paying job in the graduating class. $6,500.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. And here's this biplane selling for $7,500. I go, oh, wow, I have to sell a few computers for that one. I called up and they said, yeah, we remanufacture them. We find them in barns. We recover them, everything. Yeah, it's a great airplane. I said, well, don't go away. I'll be right back. So I'd go sell a bunch of computers and I'd come back and I call them again. And they say, well, they've gone up to 11.5 now. And I say, don't go away. I'll be right back. Go sell some more computers. Well, push come to shove, things changed. I moved back into the Philadelphia area and started a business there, and wasn't really ideal for learning to fly in a big airspace like that. So I said, screw it. Never got into flying again until I sold the company.
Yeah.
And then it was like, the wraps are off. I'm flying. I'm going to fly a biplane. And I thought I was going to buy a Stearman. And I took a lesson or two with this guy who had a Stearman. And but we flew out to this place in Arizona, fly-in, and that's where I saw the Waco for the first time. And it was like, I can't believe my eyes. The Stearman is like the ugly sister of Cinderella. The Stearman is the ugly sister, but the Waco was like Cinderella.
Yeah.
The beautiful. And I said, my God, I've never seen it. I didn't even look inside it. I just knew that that's my airplane.
Okay.
I called the factory as soon as I got back to San Diego. I says, I want one. How much is it? How much deposit? They said, well, whatever deposit you want to give us, that's fine. I said, can I send you 10,000? I said, oh yeah, sure, that's fine. I said, well, I want the next one you build. I said, fine. They started putting it together. And this, in the meantime, I decided that I was going to go back and start taking lessons with that guy with the Stearman, right? And I would learn how to fly and get in a biplane experience. So when my biplane came to me, I'd be ready. Good plan. Well thought out. I was so excited. I couldn't tell. I mean, to this day, knowing that beautiful airplane is going to be mine in a couple of months, it was overpowering. Right? It was like a big drug. And so I got a couple of my friends, and I said, I asked my instructor pilot, I said, look, I'm going to get a couple friends. I just want you to take them for a ride on Saturday. I want them to experience what I have experienced and what I'm going to experience. I want you to take them up and down the beach in the biplane. That's it. Just a 20-minute ride. No problem. And 3 or 4 of them went. And then my son, right, was there with my friends. And I said, Mike, you're going to love this. It's right at sunset. You're going to get the best flight of all of them. All right. Up and down the beach at sunset. I mean, this is like a fantasy of mine that, just unstoppable. And jumps in the plane. I'm there strapping him in, making sure he's in good, telling him how great it's going to be. He'd never been in an open cockpit biplane before.
Yeah.
And off they go. And I go back up with my other friends up at the top of the restaurant, waiting for them to come back. And, 20-minute flight, and 25 minutes, not back. We don't hear anything. And then we hear the ambulance sirens.
Oh, wow.
what the hell? Didn't put it together. But then somebody told me that what happened. They come running over because they knew what I was doing and what was going on. I'd made some friends at the airport by then, and they all knew. And the pilot ran out of gas.
Oh my God.
Which is like, the stupidest thing you could ever do is get in an airplane with not enough gas.
Yeah.
And he's an instructor.
Right.
6 months later, he was flying for Reno Air. He didn't have to worry about getting gas. Other people put the gas in.
Yeah, well.
But anyway, so we hear the siren, go running. Everybody's running to the same place. It was right at the airport in a hill right before the parking lot. And they ran out of gas and they fluffed in like this.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm there. The pilot's out of the plane. My son's still in the front cockpit. And I'm standing back with the EMTs while they're getting him on a backboard and taking him out of the airplane. And I hear, I can't feel my legs.
Oh, wow.
I'll tell you, man, I held it together. They put him in a helicopter to take him to the hospital. It's like, do you think he really wanted to get in a helicopter after just crashing an airplane? Right?
Yeah.
It's like, holy shit,
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Can't we just get a fast ambulance?
Right.
Oh, and got it together, and I met him at the airport, and his mom came, and et cetera, and we're there through into the night, and they put him in surgery and immediately, and all the rest of that stuff, and talked to the doctor, and they just said he's going to be in a wheelchair, and the totality of it didn't hit me until I got home that night. I just cried like a baby.
Yeah.
To think that the thing that I had, my dream had had hurt my son. It's just not even possible. How could that be possible, And we just spent the next 6 months. He moved into that fantasy place that I built, that I got, not the hangar home in the desert, but this place with a pool and all of garage for the Ferrari and all this stuff. And he was living in the pool house. So he had his own place, but we had therapists coming and helping him and taking care of him, helping him exercise and massage and all the rest of that stuff, and diet and on and on and on, and research and all the help we could possibly give him. And after, I don't know, 4 or 6 months, he was up and at him.
Wow.
He was ready to get back into his own life.
Yeah.
And, but he was still, on crutches and wheelchair and walker, etc. But the whole idea is to get self-sufficient.
Right.
Which he was. Got him a Mustang with hand controls, and he's driving all around with hand controls.
Wow.
So
how old is he at this time?
He's back. 22.
22.
First day of spring, 1993. And obviously, it was like the next day when the reality of it hit me that I just called the factory. I said, I got to cancel the order. This is my dream is no longer my priority. My son is my priority, and That's it.
Yeah.
So forget about that, and that was it. So Mike, he's a fighter. He's got a strong will and a great heart, and he just got himself back together. He was into car stereos, where he'd install car stereos and everything. That was his job at the time. And what he found was that he couldn't, because of the injury to his back, he couldn't get underneath the dashboards anymore. He couldn't do that kind of work anymore. So he taught himself computers. Computers. Never mentioned it. Right? He's off doing his thing, teaches himself computers, gets a job at a very technical company. All right. They would only hire people that really knew their stuff. I mean, the kid's got to be a freaking genius. And they hired him, and he did that for a couple of years, helping him out, computer security, cyber security, that kind of stuff, and computer operations, network operations. Learned it all. Stuff I never knew. And eventually decided that he wanted to start his own business, and he did. He got into computer security and hosting servers that other companies would want a server like in San Diego, because their headquarters was in New York and they needed faster delivery of stuff on the West Coast. So they needed a place to put a server. So he was the guy. All right. Now, let me tell you, talk about guts. Every new server that he added, he had to leave his home in a wheelchair, go to the car, wheelchair around the back of the car, open the trunk, put the wheelchair in the trunk, hobble around to the driver's side, get in the car, drive to the store where you could buy a server, get out of the car, hobble around to the trunk, get the wheelchair into the store, buy the server, put it in his lap, drive out to the car, put it in the trunk, put the wheelchair in the trunk, hobble around this, go back home to the data center, do the same thing again, install the server.
Wow.
Now, he's got over 1,000 servers now.
Wow.
Right? Imagine how many trips back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And what kind of, if somebody tells you you're not going to walk again, a lot of people give up.
Yeah.
Not everybody. That's why he's my hero, man.
Yeah.
I don't know that I could deal with that. And yet,
yeah,
he's the man. He is the man. I'll tell you. RESPECT. Big time.
Yeah. That's a credible story.
So, yeah. He's a great human being, you know.
I mean, it sounds like he's got a little bit of you in him too. Yeah, well, sounds like
I don't know.
He's got a little bit of you. Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't want to have that test, you know.
Right.
I wouldn't want to be tested that way to prove that.
Yeah.
You know. But what a guy. What a guy.
Wow.
Yeah. Love him to death.
And has his condition improved with time, with advances in medicine?
Still in a wheelchair.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now I keep thinking like, okay, Elon Musk is working on something where he installs neuro thing in your head where you can actually move muscles by thinking about it. And there's a lot of these things coming down, but they're not right here, right now. You can't go to the the store and say, yeah, give me one of those,
Right.
you know.
Right.
So, I still hold out hope.
Yeah. Well, that's all we can do sometimes.
Yeah. But what a guy. What a guy. Love him.
That's great. And he's in San Diego County?
Yeah. I just had lunch with him on Sunday,
Oh, okay.
So yeah, we hang out. Yeah, we talk business. We talk girlfriends. Yeah.
How's you still adhering to the vegetarian diet?
Oh yeah.
That's great.
But before we leave my son,
Yes, please.
I have a daughter.
Let's hear about her.
Wonderful human being. Well, I just wanted to tell you, I have a daughter, and I love my daughter as much as I love my son. And
Of course,
if either one of them hear this, I just want my daughter to hear that I didn't ignore.
And your daughter's name?
Right?
Your daughter's name?
Kendra.
All right. Well, hi, Michael. Yeah. Hi, Kendra.
Yeah. Just total sweetheart.
Yeah, well, that's great. Yeah. Getting back to the vegetarian piece, how long you been a vegetarian for?
Oh, maybe 40 years.
40 years. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that was before the Whole Foods. That was before, the Impossible Burger. That was before you could go to a grocery store and you'd ask for a vegetarian meal and you get pasta and cheese.
Right. Yeah. But, I was a meat and potatoes man all my life. Right. It was just nothing but steak and potatoes and hamburgers and you name it.
Right.
My favorite meal was Chateaubriand with Béarnaise sauce, at a French restaurant. It's like, oh my God, wow, 8 million calories. Why not just inject it directly into your veins, right? So, I mean, I was full on meat eater. And I met this girl who became a Frisbee partner for about a year or so.
Right.
And she lived right next door at this tiny little apartment where I wrote the software. But it was before I wrote the software that I met her. And she was a 18-year-old freshman in college, UCSD. She had just moved in. And I saw a Frisbee in her handbag, and I said, hey, what's that? And she says, Frisbee. I said, down the beach, right now, immediately. I didn't even know her name. I was a big Frisbee player, play Frisbee. So we play a little Frisbee and we start talking. And she starts telling me about veganism, vegetarian.
Okay, right.
And I said, I can't taste that good. I mean, it's just vegetables. I used to push the vegetables aside and go for the meat, Right. And she said, I want to cook you a meal. And she cooked me a meal of the most delicious stuff I ever ate. She's 18.
Yeah. Impressive.
I said, I don't even know what's in it, but it's great food. Tastes terrific. And she says, here's what we'll do. She knew by then, after a few words, that I was in computers. She says, I'll cook you meals in exchange for you typing my term papers. She didn't know how to type, but they had to be typewritten. So I didn't write them for her. I just typed them. Mm-hmm. And that was our deal. And we played Frisbee. And purely platonic. It was not one of those relationships. And that's where I learned about vegetarianism. And she would show me books that she had. She was pure vegan. She would show me books that had photos of what came out of people's intestines who were longtime meat eaters who developed intestinal problems or whatever. And I'm telling you, I would look at this stuff and I go, holy God, I mean, I can't, no. If that's growing in me, man, I don't want to. So I started getting into it.
Oh, wow.
I got lucky. I got so lucky because right after that, just before I started writing the software for Telemagic, I knew that I was completely incompetent at cooking or shopping, and I didn't want to spend my time doing those things. And I figured,
Yeah.
gee, if I could just get some good soup that I could reheat it when I wanted, and it'd just be a better thing for me because I'd be writing software like around the clock. I mean, totally into the
Right.
machine, right? And I wake up come out of this reverie at like 3 a.m, and I didn't know whether it was day or night.
Yeah.
I hadn't gotten up to pee for 14 hours.
Wow.
All right. I'm just so into it. And then I get up to go to the bathroom and look in the refrigerator. There's nothing because I don't like
Yeah.
to shop. I don't like to cook.
Right.
So I go to Denny's at 3 a.m. Nobody wants to eat that stuff for a life, So I said, screw it. Okay, I'm supposed to be smart. I got to have a solution to this. There's this thing in San Diego called the Reader, free newspaper.
Yeah.
And you could get free advertisements if it was less than 25 words or something.
Right.
So I got a free ad, and all it said was, soup wanted. And then my phone number. And that's
Right.
it. Soup wanted, phone number. Girl calls up. Tell me about the soup you want. I just want some soup so I can make it at 3 a.m. or 2 p.m. or whatever, some good veggie soup. That's it. She says, do you have any special kind? I have no idea. You surprise me, whatever soup.
Wow.
She comes. She lasted for about 6 months, and then she moved away with a boyfriend, and she turns the job over to her friend, who is also vegan.
Mm-hmm.
Vegans kind of hang out together, And
Yeah.
I have had the same cook for 37 years, Mark.
Wow.
37 years with the same cook. Soup. That's why I'm so beautiful. I have soup.
Now, that's your secret.
Now, she also makes other entree type stuff, but she doesn't come to my house and make the food and sit and stand there while I'm eating it. She delivers the food and goes away, and we're cool.
Places it very nicely in your glass covered fridge.
Oh, of course. But I have input, like this would be better if this veggies were cut differently or whatever, just feedback.
Yeah.
Now, after 37 years of feedback, I'm getting some pretty good food nowadays.
I bet.
It's the secret to my success, man.
You heard it right there, folks. What's your favorite soup? Well, I mean, my wife is a very good cook. I've got some specialty meals that I make myself. I do some specialties, but my wife is a wonderful cook, and nothing. You don't cook at all.
No, because a wise man knows his limitations, right? So she'd be making these great recipes, and I said, great food, and I said, well, what's in it? And she said, oh, a little this, that, blah, blah. I said, I want it written down. I want it on paper what these are, so I can tell you I want the lentil spinach soup, or I want this soup. So we wrote it all down.
Right.
And then I created a website on it, Carol's Cuisine, with all the recipes and all that stuff. All right. And now I just have to say, well, give me a number 101 and a 205 or whatever, And we save a lot of conversation.
Right.
Yeah. But think of all the time that I had great food and never had to go out to eat or wait in line or sit at a restaurant alone. And I'm writing software.
Yeah.
I'm building a company.
Yeah.
All right. So when I sold the company, every time we gave a bonus to the people in the company, we had this thing where every time we doubled sales, everybody in the company would get a double bonus.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so if the bonus was $1,000 last month and we hit the double again 3 months later, everybody get 2,000. And then if we hit the
Wow.
double again 6 months later, everybody get 4,000. Right? Carol, the cook, got a bonus just like everybody else in the company. Because if it wasn't for her,
Right thing to do.
I wouldn't be alive, man. You know? So
Wow.
yeah, she's true partner, 37 years.
Wow. Wow.
And here's the kicker. Here's the kicker. All that time I'm single, right? So I describe it as all the advantages of being married, except one, and none of the disadvantages. Right? Because I'm paying her to cook the food the way I want. Right.
Right.
Now, over the years, she's gone way beyond the cook thing. She does financial reports for me now every month.
Oh, wow.
She pays the bills.
Right.
She talks to vendors. She does things that I can't stand. I can't stand talking to customer support people, the phone company people and the internet people and all the rest of that stuff.
Right.
I go berserk.
Right.
I can't stand the incompetence of it all. She has patience, the patience of a saint. So I never talk to them. I never talk to those people.
That's great.
Do you know how much that's added to my life?
Oh, yeah.
She's, if my son is my hero and my daughter is my apple of my eye and the love of my life, well, Carol is, what can I say? She's the woman who has kept me alive all this time.
Wow.
All right.
Wow.
And she's just a great human being.
That's
and
great.
I just totally lucked into it.
Yeah.
Totally lucked into it.
Got soup?
Nobody has somebody working for them for 37 years.
37 years.
I mean, nobody. Who does it? Yeah.
I still can't believe that an ad that said "got soup" actually worked.
Soup wanted phone number. That's it.
Soup wanted. Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's short enough to be intriguing, I guess. It's without giving too much away.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, it's the wrong time of year, but I'm thinking of gazpacho. I love gazpacho. And my secret ingredient worth trying is pimenta de la vera, which is a smoked paprika. Highly
now
recommended. It's not now. You can get it. There's a sweet
gazpacho,
version. I like. It's a cold.
That's
it's a cold
seafood,
soup
right?
generally. No. I mean, no. There's no seafood. It's tomato based. I mean, I'm sure you could put seafood into it, but the gazpachos.
Yeah, I've never had
gazpachos I've had are. It's a tomato based puree. And
what am I thinking? Bouillabaisse.
Probably. I mean, there's something that I know what you mean, but yeah, check out the smoked paprika. One of my favorites. I mean, I like anything smoked, but that's one of my favorites.
Send me a recipe. I'll put it in a rotation.
All right.
And I'll think of you when I'm slurping my soup. Yeah.
Well, Mike, we've been at it for an hour and 45 minutes. It flew by, and it's been great. And thank you for jumping aboard and hearing your wisdom. And for folks that want to learn more about you or get in touch with you, how can people find out more about you?
BBLM.com.
And that's your website.
And that's my website too. They can go.
Right.
That's my business website, but I also have another website, personal website, which is michaelmccafferty.com.
Okay.
michaelmccafferty.com. And so my email and my website, they can get in touch with me there. And I'll talk to anybody. I like to help people. That's really what it's all about. I have more than I need. Another favorite quote is, more than enough. Greed is wanting more than enough.
Yeah.
I've got enough. I don't need anything. I don't need to get back into business. I don't need to take from people or con them. Or, I'm an old retired guy living by the ocean front in Del Mar, loving my sunsets and my life and just taking a walk every once in a while and working out and meditating and doing a little bit of yoga and just a nice quiet life of helping other people. That's it. You know, if I can help anybody who's listening, tell them to give me a call, email, whatever.
All right. Well, Mike,
and you, by the way,
thank you.
And you,
yes, sir.
By the way, I want to, I got heroes, but you're one of them. And
come on.
I wanted to tell you that Appalachian Trail. I don't know that too many people know about that, but I read the book by Bill Bryson.
Oh, right.
Yes. And that book, I think I have it right here, but I didn't. Anyway, what's it called?
A Walk in the Woods.
A Walk in the Woods. The Appalachian Trail is a lot more than a walk in the woods.
It's a journey.
This is a lifetime achievement that is scarier than a mofo. It is not something that anybody does on a lark, and almost nobody finishes.
No, very few
finishes. And you are the man that has done it. And I want you to say, after reading that book and knowing, son of Mark did that? Oh my God. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So congratulations.
It's funny.
Big time.
Thank you. I think I had written to you that I had you had posted the book on social media, and you had said, yeah, I finished it. I finished it. And you said, what, the trail or the book? And I said, well, I finished the trail, but never finished the book. So I still haven't read the whole book, but I guess it'd be a lot easier to read the book than it is to like the whole thing. But yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's great.
Well, I think if you read the book first, you would never try the trail.
Maybe
you must have done the trail before you read the book.
Yeah. I think it had come out. I was probably 10 plus years into it. So and maybe it's better off that I never finished the book while I was hiking it. So
I mean, it's scary stuff, man. Yeah. So congratulations, big time.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
And thanks for this opportunity.
Appreciate the kind words.
Help you with your podcast. I don't know if it's going to do any good. Maybe people will say, well, that's an example of how not to do a podcast. And you'll learn from this, and you'll see people that are much more entertaining and worthy of your
that's
time.
A tough one. This is a tough one to top, Mikey. So this has been great, and we made it happen. So thank you.
Well, I'm gonna opportunity to be of service.
Thank you, sir. I'm gonna call it a wrap, and we'll stop the recording here.